One thing I did want to really get your reaction to or opinion on, Carlos, I actually remember you were endorsed by Mr. Andrew Yang. I think he might have been actually the first person you said that really hit you up as the chairman of the Laconia Democrats. And he really, tried to get that endorsement and, came out to rural New Hampshire to talk to you and to see the community. And I remember you telling a story about how you traveled through a snowstorm to go meet Mr. Yang. And I was just wondering if you had any opinions or reactions to his candidacy for mayor of New York City. It's something that Zach and I have been talking about a little bit of the show, covering this mayoral race. And we definitely have, given him credit where it's due and also criticized the campaign where we think it's gone awry. He published a pretty cringy, in my opinion, article about BDS in which he kind of smeared the movement and, called it anti-Semitic, which it's not. So I was a little bit let down by that, but I still think overall his policies are pretty solid. And, I'm just interested to hear your reaction to this interesting candidacy, if you have one.
Yeah. I like many progressives, I have mixed views. I love Andrew Yang as a human being. I think he's as cool and down to earth as you see him on TV. And I like people that are genuine, that don't hold back and don't have filters. And he's just, he's just genuine.
Yeah, Carlos, you would be a good person to ask this question to, because it's something that Gavin and I argue about in private a lot, or just not argue, but just discuss. We always say, if Andrew Yang is duping us into thinking that he actually is a good person, he would have to be a hardcore sociopath, right? Because I feel like I'm so hard to convince, especially when we disagree on politics. And I find myself disagreeing with Andrew Yang at times, right? A lot of, as you just said, he's kind of a mixed bag if you're a progressive. But at the end of the day, I always kind of assume good faith in what he's doing. And I'm I feel like that's I don't know. Is that, am I is that it, I don't know.
I was skeptical when I got into the whole, this whole primary circus. I was skeptical of him because on TV, he seemed very just energetic, over the top a little bit for me. And I was like, is this really him? And so when I got to know him, honestly, he's a super cool human being. He's funny. He's genuine. I can't say enough good things about his character. When we were traveling, he was just about as much as pumping us up, the staff that was with him, as much as he was trying to pump himself up to deliver a good message. And I just saw a very kind human being. Everywhere we went, I've got to hang out with a lot of presidential candidates, and some of them could care less if their staff was eating. I would provide food for the staff because I was so concerned about them not eating, going 24 hours without eating. Because some of these presidential candidates required a lot of attention, required a lot of energy, and some of them have really weird traditions or routines. And I didn't see that with Andrew Yang. He was just down to earth. He wanted to connect with people. He genuinely cared about them. Whenever we would stop somewhere where he was supposed to talk, he would always kind of go a different direction and try to meet other people while he was there. I remember him coming to the Laconia Library and it was packed. And he stopped to talk to people in the actual library to hang out with them. And I was like, you're kind of late to your meeting. And honestly, so on that end, I think he's a great human being. But I'll be very crystal clear. I have a lot of friends in New York City. I have been campaigning for candidates in New York City, like Aleda, Tiffany Caban. These are amazing left progressive human beings. Doesn't get better than that. And there's a lot of good candidates for mayor. There's a lot of progressive candidates for mayor. So I do think that Andrew Yang maybe needs to policy-wise add a few more policies to his plate that maybe will get...
do you think he could be effectively pushed to the left? Because here's my thing. I think that if I'm reading him correctly, and one of the things that initially really irked me about Andrew Yang, and I've talked about this a lot on the podcast, so I'll give the Reader's Digest version now, is he initially came out in support of Medicare for all, which is an issue that it's extremely important to me, as it is for a lot of progressives for a number of reasons, right? I just think, healthcare is a human right that everybody should be afforded to. And when he kind of gave this, what I found to be sort of neoliberal Democrat talking point. Something I expected from Pete Buttigieg, not Andrew Yang, was when he kind of pivoted to the spirit of Medicare for all. And I'm wondering if maybe that was because other strategists got in his ear on his campaign and kind of pushed him in another direction. Because when it seems like when he's talking off the cuff, I actually listened to his Joe Rogan Experience episode when he was first running, because just get an idea of like what this dude is really about. And he talked about Medicare for all, and he talked about how we had to do this, and it was essential. And to have him walk that back, I was like, it was interesting. Do you think that he would walk back more progressive policies once he's elected, or do you think it would be possible to push him to the left further once he's in office, if the activist energy applied pressure?
I don't know exactly where he's at right now. We haven't talked since I lost my election. He was very kind to text me and let me know that he was behind me and he appreciated me running the campaign. I think his actions speak louder than anything he will say. And it's the fact that he supports progressive people in districts that aren't very popular. He's willing to go there and fight for them. And I think, he didn't need to take that chance on me. He really didn't. He had already left presidential politics. New Hampshire wasn't in his immediate political background. As you can tell now, he's running for New York City mayor. And he still went out of his way and endorsed me, and his team did everything possible. I mean,
arguably, Andrew Yang stuck his neck out more than a lot of progressives when it came to endorsing people.
He endorsed Jen Perlman, even though Bernie didn't, which would have been an obvious endorsement given that Debbie Wasserman Schultz's history with Bernie Sanders. I was like, why are you not endorsing this challenger to this person? You know what I'm saying? But Andrew Yang was there. He came
Shout out to friend of the show, Jen Perlman.
I think what people should understand, behind every man or woman in politics or non-binary person in politics, is that there's also advisors. There are also people who have an immense amount of influence on people, and that could be a good thing.
We won't say the name, but there was somebody in the Bernie campaign like that.
Well, I mean, Bernie Sanders, honestly, the reason I ended up endorsing Bernie Sanders, I had bought for a while into this angry man narrative. I thought he was angry. And then I was like, maybe it's my privilege that is speaking and I need to wake up. And then I met my political idol, and you shouldn't have any political idols, but she is my political idol, and that's Senator Nina Turner. And I met her for breakfast and we talked, and after I realized how much influence she had advising him and in policy and the way he would conduct himself with people, I just knew that he would take BIPOC people seriously. And I just said, this is my opportunity to tell my story. His policies align with mine. There's no reason why we can't work with each other. And then I met Bernie and got to know him, and I fell in love with him like everybody else. And, then the rest is history. But so there are people behind all these candidates that have an immense amount of influence, for Robert O'Rourke, Pete Buttigieg, they all have people behind them that unfortunately sometimes is good or bad, so we need to take that into account. And I think when people support candidates, they don't realize that. Believe it or not, when the presidential candidates started lining up, Harris was my favorite at the beginning. To a lot of people, she was a LGBTQ icon, even though she had some things that she did wrong in California that we weren't aware of here in New Hampshire. So at the beginning, she was, for me, the exciting candidate. And then I got to meet some of her staff, and then I got to meet some of the people that are influencing policy. And you could see it. You can see it on the ground here, people slowly backing away from this candidate that was exciting.
Well, honestly, it's a good test of how they're going to react when they're in office to the pressures that are, trying so desperately to bend them in an establishment direction. If you can't even make it through your own campaign without bending to these pressures, then you're definitely not going to be able to, legislate without bending to those pressures. So, I think it is telling. And Zach, you have every right to, be wary of Andrew Yang, because if you can't even stick behind a policy throughout your candidacy, then really what does that say about your commitment to it once you're in office? And obviously Andrew Yang has made universal basic income his, flagship issue, and Medicare.
And I think he may deserve some credit for why we were actually able to get some direct cash stimulus.
Yeah, no,
I don't think that's been discussed enough, but I think he does. I think he does have a role to play in having
and
made
that's what
possible.
I've always given Andrew Yang credit for is shifting the Andrew Overton window or whatever and introducing the idea of basic income, because before Andrew Yang entered the stage, you have to remember these conversations people were having about universal basic income. It was like blowing people's fucking minds. Even like to comprehend this policy. It was just so like almost utopian or something, like unheard of. And now it's relatively commonplace, at least in political thought. And obviously the pandemic had a lot to do with that too. We see other developed countries giving their citizens actual sustainable income to make it through this thing, unlike our government. But